Good morning, everyone. I'm Alden Takaki. A lot of you know me as the local contact for Harris Computer the past 20 years. I've been involved with sales and support of attrition and meal tracker. So that makes me a jack of all trades, but master of none. Amazingly, I'm still part of the Harris team, and I'm still a master of none. Earlier this year, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, I was approached by Dr. Jay Fry, president of and one of the founders of Biometrics. One discussion led to another, and I got to know Jay and his team and found them to be a fun group. They're very sarcastic, and so I guess I really like that part of it. And later this year, I was invited by Jay and his team to serve as their point of contact in Hawaii. My responsibility as a Hawaii point of contact is to help all of you, our customers, begin and sustain your relationship with Biometrics. I am your advocate with Biometrics and will work to ensure that your relationship with Biometrics is a good one. Sales and support will be handled by the team at Biometrics. A couple of housekeeping things. You can't speak to me. If you wave your hands wildly, I can't see you. So the only way to give us feedback would be to use the Q&A button or the chat button on the bottom of the screen. If you roll your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, menu will pop up. You'll see a Q&A, and that's a place to type in questions for us to answer at later on. But you can type in questions at any point during the presentation. And chat would be a place where you could cheer us on, jeer us if you want to in chat. That'd be a place to do it, and we'll pick it up and read it as well. But your questions will be directed to the Q&A button on the bottom here. My guest today is Dr. Jay Fry, President and CEO of Biometrics. As you may already know, Biometrics is the #1 provider of biometrics in K-12 education. What you may not know is that Dr. Fry was also a former principal and school administrator. So he comes to us with a wealth of hands-on and practical experience. Jay?
Thank you, Alden, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm a former principal of a middle school of over 1,000 students. Every day we were putting out fires related to student and staff identification. Lost and forgotten ID cards, shared ID numbers, miskeyed ID numbers, and the resulting inaccurate records all resulted in a tremendous waste of time and frustration for my staff and teachers. What we needed was an ID solution so we could feel less stress in managing all we had to get done in a day. That's why we created Biometrics almost 20 years ago. What used to take an office staff hundreds of hours a year to manage now takes hardly any time. And those inaccurate records and time-consuming audits are a thing of the past. Today, I want to explore yet another challenge that school administrators are facing that focuses on safe student ID solutions during COVID-19. I'm going to briefly frame our discussion and talk about why school administrators are using biometric technology for those of you who aren't familiar with the day-to-day operations of a typical school. Then I'm going to review the science behind COVID-19 transmission and COVID-19 mythbusters, including what familiar devices are dirty, clean, and easy to clean, and science-based best practices for safe student ID. We'll end the presentation with any questions you may have. So let's get started. One of the many challenges facing school administrators today is accurately and quickly identifying students. The bottom line is that schools receive federal and state funds based on accurate and auditable records. In addition, schools need to ensure a safe and secure environment for everyone on campus. As biometrics are becoming an integral part of our daily lives, the use and acceptance of biometrics in schools is rapidly growing as well. The technology is most often being used for food service, attendance, library, transportation, applied learning, and security purposes, with finger scanning being the primary modality. Nationwide, more than 2 million students are using biometrics every day throughout their schools. Like you, their school administrators and technology teams want to take control of their ID management headaches so they can focus on educating their students and running their programs. And like you, the outdated methods of identification like ID cards, PIN numbers, pencil and paper, and visual identification were draining their time, and resources and creating real problems every day. Now, more than ever, accurate student identification is key to the efficient operations of our schools. Schools in the US and worldwide have been implementing biometrics in order to identify students, deliver accurate and auditable student records, and ensure a safer and more secure environment for students, teachers, and staff. So how does the finger scanning process work? The finger is scanned by the finger scanner. The software identifies unique points. Note that no fingerprint images are stored. The points are transferred to a binary number. The number is encrypted, linked to the user's ID, and stored in the database. When the user returns, the same process happens, and the new template is compared to the database until a match is identified. The matching ID number is sent to the host application, and the user's account is found. All of this happens in about a second with a false acceptance rate of 1 in 200 million. It is not possible to recreate the fingerprint from this data, and privacy is ensured. We all have become overnight experts on COVID-19 by sheer necessity. According to the CDC, COVID-19 is a respiratory virus. It's mainly transmitted between people who are in close contact with one another, within about 6 feet. COVID-19 spreads through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. Gravity causes large droplets of virus-laden mucus to fall from the air after traveling only a few feet. The World Health Organization currently recommends a physical distance of at least 1 meter or 3 feet between people to avoid infection. They suggest we maintain an even greater distance between ourselves and others when we're indoors. The further away, the better. A recent study published by the New England Journal of Medicine suggested that it's plausible that COVID-19 virus can also be spread through aerosol transmission. Aerosols are fine particles that can stay suspended in the air for hours and can also travel with air currents. People emit virus particles in a range of sizes, especially when they talk. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby and possibly be inhaled into the lungs. The term airborne transmission has a specialized meaning in public health practice. For some viruses and bacteria, airborne transmission is a highly efficient mode for spreading infection. However, according to the CDC, current data do not support long-range aerosol transmission of COVID-19 like it does, for example, with measles or tuberculosis. Short-range inhalation of aerosols is a possibility for COVID-19, as with many respiratory pathogens, especially in poorly ventilated spaces. However, this cannot easily be distinguished from droplet transmission based on epidemiologic patterns. The exception is in hospital settings, for example, during the intubation procedure. Available data indicate that COVID-19 is spread more like most other common respiratory viruses, primarily through respiratory droplet transmission within a short range, less than 6 feet. There is no evidence of rapid spread to people far away or who enter a space hours after an infectious person was there. According to the CDC, it may be possible that a person can also get COVID-19 by touching a surface or object that has the virus on it and then touching their own mouth, nose, or possibly their eyes. Interestingly enough, according to the CDC, the transmission of COVID-19 to persons from surfaces contaminated with the virus has not currently been documented. Hence, contact transmission is unlikely the main way the COVID-19 virus spreads. However, washing hands and keeping hands away from the face is the recommended standard hygiene practice and should always be followed. So there's no evidence that COVID-19 virus is transmitted via food. The virus will not long live in food proper. While it's possible that food packaging could contain small concentrations of virus particles, it's easy to mitigate the risk by washing hands. There are also several other factors that could make the transmission of COVID-19 through food less likely, even if the virus is present on food or a food worker catches the virus. The food safety measures that are already in place to prevent foodborne illnesses would also reduce the transmission of any virus particles through food. Examples include frequent hand washing, cleaning of surfaces and utensils, and cooking food to the right temperatures. The good news is that the food world, especially in school cafeterias, is already diligent in hygienic and sanitary practices. They're constantly trying to stay away from the transmission of foodborne pathogens in the course of their normal routines. Another factor is the biology of viruses. They cannot survive for weeks at a time on surfaces, and unlike bacteria, viruses cannot grow inside food. So the amount of virus in the food would be expected to dwindle with time rather than grow. Also, in theory, this type of virus should not survive well in the acid environment of the stomach. Remember, COVID-19 is a respiratory virus. The CDC has issued guidelines on cleaning and disinfection. Cleaning of visibly dirty surfaces, followed by disinfection, is a best practices measure for the prevention of COVID-19 and other viral illnesses, as well as many bacterial illnesses. Cleaning refers to the removal of germs, dirt, and impurities from surfaces. Cleaning does not kill germs, but by removing them, it lowers their numbers and the risk of spreading infection. Disinfecting refers to using chemicals to kill or inactivate germs on surfaces. This process does not necessarily clean dirty surfaces or remove germs, but by killing bacteria or inactivating viruses on surfaces after cleaning, disinfecting can further lower the risk of spreading infection. According to the CDC, diluted household bleach solutions, alcohol solutions containing at least 70% alcohol, and the most EPA-registered common household disinfectant should be effective in disinfecting surfaces against the coronavirus. Under the microscope, coronaviruses appear to be covered with pointy spires, giving them the appearance of having a crown or corona. Beneath the crown is the outer layer of the virus, which is made up of lipids or fats. Getting rid of that outer layer physically inactivates the virus, so it can't bind to or enter human cells. Here's how soap renders COVID-19 inactive. Soap molecules have a head and a tail. The head bonds with water, but the tail prefers fats. The tail of the soap molecule is drawn to the fatty outer layer of the virus and begins to pry it open until it splits open, spilling its guts into the soapy water and becoming inactive. Using warm water with soap gets a much better lather than using cold water, and a good lather is the key. Rinsing hands washes everything away. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers can be as effective as soap if they are used properly. The CDC recommends that they contain at least 70% alcohol. Alcohol is effective in rendering COVID-19 inactive, but it doesn't wash away. Soap and water is better if hands or surfaces are visibly contaminated. It's important to use enough hand sanitizer and rub it all over hands, between fingers, and on the back of hands. Alcohol has different chemical properties than soap. It helps break up the germ membranes, but it needs to get into direct contact with the virus. Did you ever wonder about the cleanliness of objects we touch every day? Many scientists have. They've studied specific strains of virulent bacteria and viruses. Since COVID-19 is a new and recent virus, there still aren't many peer-reviewed articles and papers specifically studying this novel virus. However, the results of past studies can be generalized to include COVID-19, and they certainly tell a very dirty story. Biometric finger scanners, they're cleaner than you think. Researchers at Purdue University observed that the use of biometric devices was rapidly expanding. They wanted to examine whether touching the small plate glass on the finger scanners would subject users to more germs than they would be exposed to by touching objects such as pens, doorknobs, and elevator buttons. The Purdue University researchers found that the glass surfaces of finger scanners have the same amount of bacteria as those on a typical doorknob. The researchers concluded that a person is not any more likely to become ill from touching a biometric device than from a plain, old-fashioned doorknob. The researchers suggested that washing hands with soap and water or keeping bacterial solution handy, as well as keeping all surfaces sanitary, are best practices in killing bacteria and rendering viruses inactive. ID cards and pin pads are even dirtier than public toilets. Researchers studied the cleanliness of other objects that we come in contact with every day, like ID cards, pen pads, card readers, wallets, backpacks, purses, cash, and even cell phones. Some of these studies took place in hospitals, some in office buildings, and others in public places. All of the studies reviewed compared the types and levels of bacteria and viruses to what was lurking on the grossest of the gross: public toilets. Why use public toilets as the gold standard in filth? Because studies show that most people rank public toilets as number one in being contaminated and downright filthy compared with all other items that we touch. How can anything be any more disgusting than a public toilet, right? Wrong. Researchers found that pen pads are even dirtier than public toilets. Pen pads have nooks and crannies in many areas to harbor bacteria and viruses. They also are more difficult to clean thoroughly. Other studies showed that bacteria and viruses cling to ID cards, wallets, purses, and backpacks. In a school setting, ID cards are typically stored in wallets, purses, backpacks, or on lanyards hung around the students' necks. They're often passed from person to person and even end up on the floor and in mouths. In other words, ID cards are dirty and germ-ridden. Even cash was found to be cleaner than ID cards. In the studies, purses were especially contaminated because they were often placed on bathroom floors and sink areas. Believe it or not, sink areas were found to be even more contaminated than public toilets. Cell phones were found to be even filthier than cards. We now use our cell phones at the park, in the bathroom, during a meal, and while in bed, sometimes all in one day. Think about it. During every phone call, the cell phone can come in close contact with strongly contaminated human body areas. For example, cell phones are handed to other people and are contaminated by the phone touching other body areas, including mouths, noses, and ears. When was the last time you cleaned and disinfected your cell phone? When was the last time you placed your cell phone on the kitchen counter and then made yourself a sandwich? So-called contactless options aren't so contactless when you look at the whole picture. These options generally require a card. Dirty cards mean that hands will immediately be contaminated, and so will all the sanitized surfaces those hands touch. Even good old-fashioned visual identification is challenging during physical distancing. Did you ever try to hear a first grader whisper his name, or a ninth grader wearing a mask mumble her name? Of course, you can still have to deal with the same identification problems of accuracy, efficiency, and accountability that you dealt with pre-COVID-19. The important thing here is to evaluate your entire process rather than just a piece of it. The beauty of biometric finger scanner is that the outside covering is a simple plastic casing with a small glass plate. There are no nooks and crannies that harbor germs. It has only one spot to touch with the tip of one finger. Most importantly, in a world where there's little control over the sanitation of people and objects, you can have control over the cleanliness of the finger scanners and the fingertips that touch them. By using recommendations from the CDC, along with simple best practices recommendations, your finger scanners can be the most hygienic spot your students and staff touch all day. Here are some best practices for keeping finger scanners clean and disinfected. Use alcohol wipes or a soft paper towel moistened with rubbing alcohol. Gently clean off the finger scanner. Dry immediately and with another paper towel or just air dry. Sterilize the finger scanners periodically throughout the day. Here are some best practices for scanning. Maintain the recommended distance between people. Touch this finger to a sponge moistened with an alcohol solution or an alcohol wipe. Touch the finger to a paper towel to dry. Touch the finger to the scanner to scan. We call it clean, dry, scan. It's simple, easy, safe, and accurate. Here's a video so you can see it in action.
Yes, your biometric finger scanners are still the safest hygienic solution for student and staff ID management in your schools. According to the CDC, the COVID-19 virus does not spread easily by touching surfaces or objects and recommends using a 70% alcohol solution for use against the virus. It's easy to clean your finger scanners with a spritz of an alcohol solution. It's also easy to have each person touch an alcohol sponge to clean their finger, touch a paper towel to dry their finger, and then scan. We call it Clean Dry Scan. It's simple, easy, fast, and accurate. Your finger scanners just may be the most hygienic spots your students touch all day.
We're not going to give up our cell phones, credit cards, and purses. And we have found that our customers are not going to give up their finger scanners. We're going to adjust our behaviors, learn new techniques, and incorporate innovative ideas to keep us all safe and healthy. At Biometrics, some of our best ideas come from our amazing customers in schools and districts across the United States and beyond. Rob Woods, Associate Principal at Avon High School in Ohio, can give us some of his thoughts.
In a COVID world that we're living in now, this product actually is an enormous solution. When you come into schools now, because this is what we're living in terms of planning, you're going to walk into plexiglass at that front counter, if you guys didn't know this yet, probably across the country. And you're going to probably, by and large, see kids wearing masks, except at lower levels. So when that kid comes in late, can you imagine having a plexiglass wall up? Secretary's wearing her mask, the kid is wearing his mask. What's your name, honey? Because you can't really recognize the kid, right? You can only see right here. The whole thing is so clean and fit for a pandemic world. I hadn't even put my mind actually to that final thought of, oh my gosh, they're not even writing passes. They're just taking this fresh thermal printout and going. Honest to God, it's fantastic.
Eventually, schools will open to full-time attendance, not only with the same challenges as before, but with new challenges. For example, the difficulty in communication wearing masks. School districts continue to see the value in finger scanning biometrics, not in spite of these times, but because of these times. Not only is finger scanning biometrics simple, easy, and fast, it also provides the additional value of efficiency, accountability, and most importantly, safety. None of that has changed.
Now it's time for some questions. What is the cost to the schools?
School can start with all of the biometrics and installation, finger scanner hardware for one station for about $2,500. And that includes online installation, setup, and the first year of licensing and support.
How easy is it to get started with the system?
We have a terrific support team that has a 5-step process for installation that includes a beginning meeting to talk about implementation and installation. There's training on how to enroll. There's the import of the database and setup of all those things. So everything that you need to get started and use the biometrics is all provided from the very beginning.
So how long does it take to go through the whole process? If you were to receive a PO today, when would we be able to schedule training and installation?
Well, of course, it always depends on the availability of the team, but we have an online calendar at a website that's available for our customers for online support, and they can schedule the time. We like to say that we can move as fast as the school district can, and so it really depends on the number of schools that are the district is buying for. If you're buying for one school and you're using it in one cafeteria, you can easily be set up and ready to go within a week. It may take a little longer depending on the availability of your team, but we can move quite fast depending on the schedule of the school and the timeline for our support team.
Great, thanks, Jay. Next question. We are in our 3rd year, I believe, using Biometrics. We love it. Are there any plans to have it work with Infinite Campus?
I wish I could say yes to that. Infinite Campus, we would love to work with, but Infinite Campus has a attitude that they discourage use of third-party applications. However, if you contact your salesperson at Infinite Campus and you ask them or tell them that you want to use our biometrics with their solution, it could pressure them to work with us better. We work with a number of different student information software companies, including PowerSchool, and we would be happy to work with Infinite Campus as well.
Next question is, what are the advantages of a biometric fingerprint scanner versus a digital ID that could be kept on a phone?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind to me from my experience as a principal is the phone, just like an ID card, can be used by other people. So even though the phone can lock people out, we all know that if someone has your log on ID, they can log into your phone and then use that account. And I have to say, as a principal, one of the driving forces for starting this company was dealing with the parents who called in and said, my kid did not have 5 pizzas on Friday. And of course, really, the kid didn't have 5 pizzas on Friday. The problem was somebody took the child's card and charged 5 pizzas on Friday for their friends. And of course, then I had to deal with paying for that. That was something that happened more than once. And I believe that a student's account in the POS should be like it is in the bank. It should be safe and accessible only by the student with a bill that's payable only by the parent. And the identification on the phones has the same potential for misuse as a lost ID card would.
Thanks, Shay. Next question. If for some reason the scanner does not work, is there a manual override to enter the student information?
There always is. The POS applications, as with other applications, have a manual way of entering information, and they can do that as well. I will tell you one funny situation that happened to us in West Virginia, I believe it was, where about 75% of the school districts use our software. And that was a school that was primarily kindergarten, and other schools in the district had an internet outage. And so the schools that did not have our biometrics could not identify to the POS. However, the school that had our biometrics used our biometrics to identify the students as they went through the line. And our software keeps a record of those ID numbers that have scanned in, and that school easily referred to that record in order to add the information later to their POS. So there are a variety of ways of doing this to identify people to applications besides biometrics.
How long is the process of setting up an individual child for their fingerprint?
It takes about 30 seconds to enroll the students. And what happens is during the initial setup of all the data and information for your purchase, we import into Identimetrics your student database and ID numbers so that you can find them readily, like searching in a spreadsheet. Once you find them, the student comes to you and they simply, the enroller confirms the student is who they are. They click on their name, they select enroll, and they do 3 scans of the right index finger and 3 scans of the left index finger, and it's done. And here's the miracle for me as a principal. As I told my secretary, Chris, we would find a solution to get rid of these ID cards, which took her roughly 2 weeks to make every year. And that was, once you've enrolled in our software as an elementary student, you don't have to re-enroll them ever again. That biometric data can be transferred to the junior high school or to the high school, and it's a one and done.
Are there any schools in Hawaii that are currently using this system?
Gosh, there are a lot of schools in Hawaii. What comes to mind, the first one that comes to mind is Roosevelt High School. And they now have been using it for some time. But there are a whole number of schools in Hawaii that are using our system, both elementary as well as high school.
What is your elevator speech, I guess your short speech, regarding student privacy to parents who are concerned about Big Brother privacy issues?
That's a very good question, and I must say I've had 20 years to practice that speech. One of the concerns that people have is the ability to find and get a student fingerprint image. The way minutia-based consumer biometrics works is that the fingerprint scanner looks at the fingerprint and it identifies what are called minutia points. These are sweat pores. They're places where the lines on the fingerprint start or stop, or there's a swirl or a whirl. And the software identifies those points and discards the image, and now is left with basically a connect the dot pattern of dots. If one were able to actually reverse engineer the encryption and get to that particular template, they would have a group of dots, but not know what those dots represented in order to recreate the fingerprint. There are some great videos on our website. One of them shows you pictures of how the biometrics work, and I believe you would have seen that in this presentation. And also there's a video on the actual enrollment of students in which 3 or 4 students are enrolled in less than 2 minutes or so.
Next question is,
Oh, I'm sorry, Alden. I want to interrupt you for 1 second to add another thing.
Sure.
It's not uncommon for for a parent to say, I don't want my child to use the biometrics, because as we all know, everyone has their own truth. And no matter what facts you give them, they may not believe you. So you can always use the current way of identifying students that you are. So if you're using with your POS a pin pad, you could use a pin pad with those few students who would opt out and use the finger scanning with the other. What normally happens then is those few students who have opted out generally see how easy and convenient it is to use the finger scanner, and will, badger may be the wrong word, but convince their parents to allow them to use it.
Okay, it kind of dovetails into the next question in a way, which is, if we have a pin pad, do we need a finger scan?
Well, if you use a pin pad exclusively, you don't need the finger scanner. But if your goal is to speed up your lines and reduce the inaccurately entered ID numbers, then you would use the finger scanner. And you can use both the finger scanner and the pin pad on the same line.
Next question is, sorry, I know this question is off track, but does Identimetrics have a software program for visitors coming on campus?
No, we don't, but we are a company like Switzerland, and we partner with a large number, probably close to 100 different software applications. And so there are several of them I can think off the top of my head: School Check-in, Keeping Track, Schoolgate Guardian, for instance, which are all visitor management applications. And those, our software will interface with those visitor management applications and allow you to use finger scanning in order to identify to those applications.
It also worked with IdentiKit's visitor system.
Mm-hmm.
You can give me a call and I'll get you in contact about that. I think this is what we've got. This is the last question, I think. Does the enrollment include the process of receiving approval from parents to obtain student biometric information? And do we need to receive approval from the superintendent to use biometric scanning?
We recommend that school districts contact parents, school board members, and the superintendent and the teachers, everybody who's involved in the process, to let them know that they're going to use biometric finger scanning identification. So as a part of the process, we recommend and give you examples of letters that you can send home to parents. You can customize the letters so that it tells them how biometric finger scanning works, how it protects the student's identification, that they can choose to opt out if they wish.
So do you provide like a form for them to send out that they
We
can
do.
customize?
Yes, we have sample letters, and the sample letters can be customized and used. And we also have a sample biometric policy for the school, which basically says, we're going to use biometrics. You can opt out of the biometrics. We're not going to sell your child's information, and we are going to delete it when they leave the school. We saw requires us to protect student data from being used anywhere else. And so we encourage people to invite their parents to opt out if they want to, but once you give them the option to opt out, they seldom do.
Thanks, Shay.
I think one of the points that was missed there was that we're signatories of the Student Privacy Pledge, which is a nationwide pledge protecting student information.
Thanks,
Yes,
Brent.
thank you very much. Thank you for adding that.
We have another question. We have Grab and Go Meal, which is a drive-by. It is a good program for visitors and a child who is tardy. Since we already have a scanner, what is the cost for just for the fingerprinter, or do we need to purchase a complete set?
You have to complete the entire system, purchase the entire system if you haven't. So as I said, the entire system to begin with is $2,500. You can add additional scan stations for $600 and $100 installation.
Does school food service need to be informed as well?
Only if they're going to participate in using the biometrics. Are you talking about at the state level or at the school level?
State level.
Not to my knowledge. In fact, we have references from people at the state level who have encouraged others in Hawaii to use our software.
Okay, I think that's the last question that I have from the group.
Well, I just have one closing comment here, Alden, and that is that I hope the webinar has been helpful to all of you as you prepare for the time when our school days eventually return to normal.
It's been a great presentation, Jay. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody, for attending. You will be getting an email later. If you don't get one within 2 or 3 days, let me know and I'll forward it to you. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me or call me directly if you like. Thanks again, everybody, for attending the session.
Thank you very much.